Usually when we talk about a memory, there's this expectation of ownership, right? Like you treat it like a locked diary. You open it up, and the thoughts inside, whether they are joyful or, deeply traumatic, they belong entirely to you.
Or they're the foundational building blocks of your identity.
Exactly. They belong to you.
Yeah, it functions in the closed system. We rely heavily on that strict continuity. You really need to know that the person who went to sleep last night is the exact same entity waking up this morning.
With the same history and the same emotional baggage.
Precisely.
But imagine stepping into a reality where that diary can simply be overwritten, where we are looking at a psychological landscape that is just completely hijacked.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is the absolute definition of a corrupted mental hard drive. And that corrupted hard drive is the central engine of D.P. Kirk's 2017 novel, San Vitae, The Awakening.
Such a complex book.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a magnifying glass to this incredibly complex, genre-bending narrative. Specifically, we're zeroing in on one pivotal section, which is Chapter 25, titled Shared Memory.
It's a great chapter to focus on.
Yeah, and for you listening, if you love intricate world building that forces you to actively piece together a puzzle, a story-blending, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi, dark fantasy, and deep psychological trauma, this is exactly your kind of story.
Oh, absolutely.
So here's a roadmap. We're going to briefly set the stage of this shattered world, plunge directly into the adrenaline-fueled events of that shared memory chapter, analyze the author's really unique narrative structure, and finally lay out exactly why this book should be next on your reading list.
Sounds perfect. And, that specific chapter really functions as the perfect microcosm for the entire novel.
Yeah.
But to really grasp the sheer disorientation the author pulls off there, you first have to understand the foundational rules of the world D.P. Kirk has built.
Right, which is no small task.
No, not at all. We are looking at a post-cataclysmic Earth. A planet that is permanently marred by an anomaly called the Heaven's Scar.
Which is such a visceral image, right? Just a permanent black void ripped across the sky.
Yeah.
But what crawls out of the ashes of that cataclysm isn't your standard zombie apocalypse setup. The surviving society is fractured based entirely on biology and ideology.
Exactly. Biology is the literal dividing line. On one end of the spectrum, you have the ruling class, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Santerrie Council.
Right.
And they are governed by the San Vitae. So in the vernacular of this world, they are essentially vampires.
But not in the Dracula sense?
No, it's much more biological than supernatural. They rely on vitae, which acts as a highly potent form of life energy or blood to power these incredible, devastating physical manifestations.
And then underneath them, you just have the Sans, right? Like ordinary baseline humans who are really just trying not to be collateral damage.
Yeah, the everyday people.
But then you have the ideological pushback, the humanist faction, and they view the Vitae mutations as an absolute corruption of the human species, so they reject it entirely.
Right, they rely instead on heavy, high-tech weaponry to sort of level the playing field against these biological powerhouses.
Which creates this massive ideological war, and in the crossfire you find the reborn mutants fighting for basic survival, right? The Sanites and the completely maddened anti-San.
Yeah, it's a brutal ecosystem.
It really is. And I want to pause on the Sanites because that is where our protagonist Kurien fits in. And his starting point in this narrative is, it's incredibly bleak.
That's putting it mildly.
Right. He has spent the last 12 years locked inside an inquisitor's vault, enduring constant, systematic torture. And we aren't just talking about physical pain here. 12 years of sensory deprivation and agony fundamentally rewires the human brain.
Oh, absolutely. The hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for memory formation and spatial navigation, it takes massive damage under prolonged trauma. Yeah, the brain basically starts dissociating just to survive. So when Kurien finally escapes, his mind is essentially shattered glass.
He's just stumbling through these moss-covered ruins, completely unmoored from time.
Right. He can barely distinguish the harsh reality of his present escape from the intrusive, haunting memories of his past lover, a powerful Covenness named Myasuchi.
And of course, her twin, Rikuko, is in the mix there too. But his only real anchor in this present timeline is a woman named Sharina.
Yes.
They are forced together by pure circumstance, but they form a blood bond. And this is where I need you to break down the mechanics for me, because a blood bond sounds like a classic fantasy trope, but Kirk treats it like a biological tether.
Yeah, it's super technical. Think of Vitae not just as fuel, but as a dense information storage medium. It actually carries genetic memory and emotional resonance.
Oh, okay.
So when a Sanite forms a blood bond, they are syncing their nervous systems.
Yeah.
They share the life energy, yes, but they also share immediate sensory input, thoughts, and, most dangerously for someone in Kurien state, they share trauma.
Wait, so if I'm tracking this, it's like waking up in a post-apocalyptic matrix, right? But instead of fighting machines, you're a biologically enhanced survivor dealing with rival vampire factions, and your hard drive, your memory, is corrupted with someone else's files.
That open network analogy perfectly illustrates the danger. His mind is frantically trying to rebuild its operating system while taking on massive amounts of raw, unfiltered data from the bond.
And from his own fractured subconscious.
Exactly.
And that biological vulnerability is what crashes down on the reader in chapter 25. Like, you are reading this tense post-apocalyptic survival story. Kurien and Sharina are navigating these desolate ruins. You turn the page to the chapter titled Shared Memory, and the wasteland simply ceases to exist.
Yeah, the environmental shift is instantaneous and just violent.
We are suddenly thrust into the middle of this high-octane escape sequence in a fully functioning, neon-lit, futuristic Tokyo.
It's so jarring.
Right. Kurien is suddenly acting like a completely different person. He's tossing a woman named Kiki a suit of red and black dragonfly motorcycle gear. Kiki is grabbing a literal samurai sword off a display counter. They jump on a street bike, and they are just tearing through a cyberpunk cityscape toward a place called the TASC complex.
The visual language completely flips on you. We go from the decay of the heaven's scar to resilient sci-fi fabrics mimicking dragon scales and high-tech corporate architecture.
I have to be honest here. If I'm deeply invested in the gritty, survivalist tone of a ruined Earth, and an author suddenly drops me into a neon Tokyo motorcycle chase with katanas and zero warning, my first instinct is to feel cheated.
Yeah.
It feels like the author got bored and just glued two entirely different manuscripts together. Like, how does this not just completely alienate the reader?
Well, it is a massive risk, and if handled poorly, it would absolutely break the reader's trust. But the sensory details Kirk deploys here are designed to create a very specific type of claustrophobic panic.
Right.
This isn't just an action scene for the sake of action. You are riding directly into the epicenter of the catastrophe. This is the moment the world broke.
The prose does get incredibly kinetic. You read about the barricades going up, the streets flooding with masses of shadowy figures with these, like, luminescent eyes.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's the real-time collapse of a society during the alternate space drive disaster, which is apparently the fault of a character named Minister Haggate. And just as they are speeding down a corridor, their path is blocked by a terrifying 5-meter-tall, naked humanoid monster.
The tension is ratcheted up to a breaking point. A collision is entirely unavoidable.
And then snap. The Tokyo scene evaporates. The neon lights, the motorcycle, the sword, the monster, they are just gone.
Completely gone.
Kurien is standing in the dirt. He looks around, completely dazed, and asks, "Where are we?" He's actually staring at a giant looming black spire in the post-apocalyptic wasteland, traveling toward a refuge called Haven with Sharina.
Yeah, that jarring whiplash is exactly the intended effect. It forces a critical question about narrative reliability.
Wait, hold on. If they are in a wasteland hiding from the New Covenant soldiers, why were they just on a motorcycle in a functioning Tokyo? Is this time travel, or is Kurien completely losing his mind?
It's definitely not time travel. We established pretty quickly that Kurien's mind is betraying him.
Yeah.
The Tokyo sequence is a hallucination.
Okay.
It's a memory bleeding over and entirely overriding his present sensory input.
But whose memory is it? Because Kurien wasn't riding a motorcycle in Tokyo when the world ended.
Right. His consciousness has merged with an ancient entity, or a past life, known as Lotus. And Lotus was physically present in Tokyo during the alternate space drive disaster.
Oh, wow.
Because Kurien's own memories were so aggressively fragmented during his 12 years in the Inquisitor's vault, his brain is desperately trying to fill the empty sectors. The trauma basically created a vacuum, and Lotus's memories are rushing in to fill it.
What I find so fascinating is how the human brain tries to make sense of foreign data. Like, during the hallucination, Kurien thinks he's riding the motorcycle with a woman named Kiki. But when the hallucination snaps, we realize Sharina was there the whole time.
Right.
So in this shared memory, Sharina is Kiki. His broken mind took the historical data of Kiki and superimposed it onto Sharina because there was a physical resemblance.
Exactly. The brain is fundamentally a pattern recognition machine. When faced with the overwhelming alien data of Lotus's memory, Kurien's mind renders the scene using the closest available assets.
Right. It just grabs whatever is nearby.
Yeah. Sharina's presence triggers the memory of Kiki, and the lines between the two identities just blur completely.
This is where we need to look at the actual literary mechanics of how D.P. Kirk pulls this off. The quality of this chapter doesn't just come from the cool imagery.
No, not at all.
It comes from visceral disorientation. Kirk refuses to hold your hand. The text doesn't say, Kurien suddenly remembered a past life. The prose literally stacks two conflicting realities on top of each other.
Yeah, it demands an immense amount of active participation from the reader. You have to parse what is actually happening in the physical space versus the psychological space.
It's like two completely different pictures printed on the same piece of film, a literary double exposure photograph. You're seeing the ghost of the past overlapping perfectly with the present, and Kirk makes you squint to figure out which one is real.
A double exposure is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. But, a technique like that risks becoming an exhausting gimmick if there is no emotional weight to ground it.
True.
And that's the brilliance of Chapter 25, the immediate aftermath of that reality snap.
The grounding moment. When the hallucination breaks and Kurien asks where they are, Sharina doesn't offer a gentle, comforting explanation. She playfully hits him, and then she kisses him.
Yeah, she uses highly specific physical stimuli to forcefully tether him back to the present.
He is genuinely shocked by it. His reaction is, "You hit me."
Kirk is utilizing a profound understanding of how the nervous system processes dissociation here. When someone is trapped in a severe flashback, their brain fully believes the past trauma is happening in the present.
Right.
Gentle words often aren't enough to cut through that neurochemical loop. Pain, a sudden, unexpected physical shock like a hit, forces the nervous system to instantly prioritize the present physical body over the intrusive memory.
Followed immediately by the intimacy of a kiss, it's a masterful tonal contrast. You have this explosive, high-stakes, cyberpunk catastrophe that abruptly cuts to a quiet, tragic, deeply intimate moment in the dirt.
Oh.
Beneath all the sci-fi armor and the mutant politics, Sharina is just a woman desperately trying to keep the man she is biologically bonded to from disappearing into his own corrupted mind.
And that dynamic fundamentally changes how the reader interacts with the broader narrative of the book.
Because it turns exposition into an active experience. Think about how massive world building is usually handled in fantasy or sci-fi. A character stumbles into an ancient library, or a wise elder sits them down by a fire and delivers a 10-page monologue about the history of the world.
Right. Listen closely, young traveler, for I will tell you of the Heaven Scar.
Exactly.
Which is safe but entirely passive. Kirk bypasses that crutch completely. The mysteries of the cataclysm, the intricate politics of the Santerrie and the Humanes, the nature of the ancient Antividi, none of it is handed to you on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Kirk uses these violent memory shifts to dole out the lore piece by piece.
You aren't being told about the end of the world. You're forced to ride a motorcycle through the collapsing streets of Tokyo while the sky tears open. You have to endure the trauma of the history to understand it.
It respects the intelligence of the audience. The book operates as a massive puzzle box. Every time Kurien slips into Lotus's mind, you acquire a new piece of the alternate space drive disaster.
Right.
You slowly begin to realize how the past mistakes of characters like Minister Hakaday directly created the shattered world Kurien and Shrina are navigating right now.
I can see how some people might feel overwhelmed by the sudden shifts in reality, but it sounds like if you lean into the confusion, the payoff is massive. It's a feature, not a bug. Right?
Oh, absolutely a feature. Because the external plot, the survival in the wasteland, the fighting against the new Covenant soldiers, is almost secondary to the internal psychological stakes. The engine driving Kurien forward is a suffocating amount of guilt.
Survivor's guilt is such a central pillar of the narrative. He carries the immense shame of failing his former Covenness Myasuchi.
Right. And now he finds himself bonded to Sharina, who brings her own horrific trauma from her time in the Inquisitor vaults.
You have these two profoundly broken people tethered together by biology. Kurien is terrified that his own brokenness, like the literal fragmented memories and the violent impulses of the entity inside him, is going to destroy Sharina.
So the shared memory stops being just a cool sci-fi concept and becomes a devastating metaphor for how unresolved trauma infects our relationships.
Oh, yeah.
The past is quite literally overriding his current life, preventing him from fully engaging with the person standing right in front of him. He is fighting a war to determine if he even has the right to exist or to love after the failures of his past.
So when we pull back and look at the journey this book takes you on, it's operating on multiple impressive levels. You get the intricate factional warfare between the vampires and the tech purists. You get the adrenaline spike of the double exposure hallucination in Chapter 25, blending a ruined wasteland with a futuristic Tokyo.
But underneath all of that world building, it is a searching examination of identity. It forces you to look at how we survive when our own minds become hostile territory.
Which brings us to a lingering thought, something that really sticks with you long after you put the book down. We started by comparing memory to a locked diary, the proof of who we are. But if Vitae acts as a biological hard drive and trauma can be downloaded from one soul to another,
If the memories that shape your reactions, your fears, and your loves are no longer strictly your own,
are you still you? If you inherit the ghost of someone else's life and their history starts dictating your present, where does their identity end and yours begin? When you look into the diary of your own mind and you realize the handwriting isn't yours, how do you decide which pages you are allowed to keep?
that's the real question.
It's a question the novel refuses to answer cleanly, and that ambiguity is exactly why San Vitae, The Awakening, is worth exploring. Grab a copy, step into that labyrinth, and see how you handle the double exposure of Kurien's reality. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.